All right, hello everyone, and welcome to another live streaming sessions with NetGroup Simplifying Network Automation. We brought back Damien,
Hi, thanks.
Bill. Hi, welcome back, Damien. How have
Thank
you
you.
been? How have you
Oh,
been?
it's
I know it's
been
been
it's
like a
been
couple few
yes.
months.
A lot of us went to Prague for AutoCon.
How was
It was
that?
really cool. Yeah, that was intense. Get out of those weeks, completely exhausted, but I think it was great. You could definitely see the community growing every single time. There's more and more people, so
Mhm.
very exciting. I think the conversation gets. I feel like we're getting more and more people that are actually we're seeing that going from beginners to intermediates or experts. There's definitely the maturity increasing also in the community. So super exciting.
It's nice to see, yes, and it's nice to see these like third-party events that are really starting to take off. I think they've had like more than 600 people or something. So there's like
Yeah,
exponential growth from event to event. So that's nice to see. Yes, I mean, we've been talking automation, right, for years now here. And funnily enough, now we have AI, right? So everybody's talking about AI. So we kind of everybody, the whole industry is so fascinated and excited about what AI will bring. We've seen all the Chat GPT and what folks are doing with that, and Gemini, and all these LLMs coming on. And then as the industry evolves, we're talking about Internet of Agents at Cisco, right? We have our agency framework. There's frameworks coming from Google, from Microsoft, IBM, so on and so forth. But specifically for our discussion today, right, you were mentioning MCP, right? Tell us a bit about MCP, Damien. Like, what is it? Why would people be interested in it? How does it come into the picture with the agents, and Internet of
yeah,
Agents,
yeah.
all of that? Yeah.
Such a big topic. So yeah, definitely. We're also going deep into AI, trying to see how we can use it in our own day to day and coding. But I don't think we're going to use that today. But the what we're seeing is I think it's there's a parallel to make between automation and AI in the sense that we always say personally that data having good data is super important to be able to have good automation. Like automate data is at the center of automation, and it's interesting that we're seeing that more and more. It feels like data is also going to be at the center of AI. Like if you want to have if you want an AI tomorrow to help you manage your infrastructure, and I think there's a lot of topic on how can we're going to be able to have LLMs help us with the day-to-day, with either it's the design, the build, the run, or anything around the infrastructure. I think is we need to give them access, or we need to make sure they can understand how the infrastructure is running. And that means that we need to give all these LLMs or whatever other tools we have a good way to connect to the existing tools that we have, whether it's the orchestration frameworks, the source of truth that has more like the intended state of the network. We give them access to the observability stack. And I think it's a huge opportunity for us as an industry that if we build the right tools that this LLM can use properly, then we'll be able to do amazing things. And so MCP is this new protocol that I think was released, in November initially, and I think it
Last year,
really,
yeah, but
I
Anthropic was
think
right, yeah.
Anthropic, yes, the one behind Clouds did that, and it really blew up. I think around April, May. So not no, yeah, April, May, maybe 3-4 months ago, and then everybody has been looking at it. So yeah, it's a way to pretty much, I think I have the website here open, and I think they explain it very well. Is this MCP is like it's a way that you can build a server, for example. So you have what we call an MCP server, and that will be in front of a tool. That could be a database, that could be any system out there, and
InfraHub.
that could be InfraHub. In this case, that's what we're going to export today. Like it can be the source of truth, that's where you have all of your infrastructure models, you have all the IP addresses, you have the cabling, you have all your inventory, you have everything into this system. And then this through MCP, we will be able to make it accessible to the LLM, and they will be able to consume that. Now, I think, honestly, what took me, the first time I saw MCP was like, why do we need that? We already have API. Why don't we just give my, open API specification for my REST API or my GraphQL schema to the LLM and let it figure it out how it's going to connect to my system? And I think what I realized over time is that system doesn't work, because in the world of AI, we're actually, more is not the better. Like, the more information you give to an LLM, actually, usually it gets overwhelmed and it doesn't perform so well. So actually, the challenge now is, when you talk to LLM, is not to give them more data, is to give them just enough data so that they're able to perform the task that they need, but not more. And if we just overwhelm them, like to give them the entire schema of the database, or if you give them everything at once, then we're just, they're just drowning them into too much information. And so that's where there's really this shift on mindset now. It's like we need to reinvent or rethink how we're actually doing our APIs, and how we're going to build this new way of interacting with our system in a way that is optimized for the and MCP is definitely a key component in that. So yeah, I think it's super exciting.
So it's a perfect topic, because in the previous episodes, right, we've set up InfraHub pretty much from scratch. We had to run it in Docker containers. You've set it up. We showed GraphQL, right? We've had a couple of test sites. Basically, we've built an InfraHub installation as a source of truth with different sites, with different devices. So we've shown folks how to do that. And we got to a point where it's like, okay, let's show folks, right, the programmability aspect of it, the API. So that's exactly where this comes the picture, with an MCP wrapper on top of that API. Is that right, Damien?
Exactly. So yeah, the goal today is actually, we're going to start from scratch, from the very beginning, and we're going to build an MCP server that connects an LLM that I have locally to InfraHub in this case. And we're going to explore like how to give it just the right information that it needs, and how to actually navigate, and having multiple tools. And again, I don't pretend to be an expert. I think, this field is evolving so fast that, I would be a fool to claim that I know everything. I'm certainly learning myself every day, but I think, we can explore some pretty cool things here. So hopefully, if you never built your own MCP server, that will help clarify a lot of things, and also maybe give you a better understanding of how having an MCP in front of your own source of truth would be able to help you tomorrow with various tasks and workflow and questions that you might have. So
cool. All right, so there's a couple of comments here. Imran, the recording, yes, this is recorded. Also, you can find it on LinkedIn, YouTube, X, all social media platforms, on the Cisco DevNet channel and accounts on all there. And Themistocles, hi Themistocles, thanks for joining us. All right, Damien.
So yeah, so what I have here is first, I'm going to use the public instance of InfraHub, so that I don't have, so it's sandbox.infrahub.app here. And then for the clients, I'm actually going to use, so the clients could be, I think it's what they're showing here. It's like, there's many LLM clients nowadays. It's either you could use the Cloud desktop app, more and more like VS Code and Cursor and all the IDs, they have their own clients. Just because I feel like it was actually a good example, I'm going to use one that is called Yan. It's called Yan, and it's pretty much a generic LLM client that I run on my laptop, and that is and I just put my own like OpenAI key, and I can select which, but like, yeah, it's just it's just a standard LLM, the same way you would have it if you were using the OpenAI client. It's just that what I like with this one is that I have the possibility to actually configure my own MCP servers, and I will be able to turn it on and off and all that. And I feel like, again, for this exercise, it was a cool tool to use. But technically, the client it does matter, actually. We're going to see that because the MCP protocol is evolving really fast. And there's a lot of new tools that are being added. So at some point, the client also needs to catch up and they need to implement the support of those capabilities. So the client does matter because we need to make sure we have clients that support that. But for now, we're going to stick with the basic feature sets, and we're just going to use what they call the tools, and pretty much every client supports that. So yeah, so let's get started. So I pretty much created a new project. Let me know if it's big enough. So I just initialized using UV a completely new project that I called DevNet MCP InfraHub. So, and yeah, we're gonna start from scratch, install everything, and get going. So here we have our installation. So the first thing is we need to install a couple packages. So for this exercise, we're going to use a package called FastMCP. I think it's a really cool. So it's a Python package that was built, dedicated to build, MCP servers quickly. They have actually a really good documentation. So if you go to FastMCP, you have for example, that's the minimum we need to be able to build an MCP server. So I'm going to go with that and just have it here. For example, create a new. So because I created the with UV automatically created the structure and the directory for me and everything. And so here. So here I have basic MCP servers, and what this MCP is doing is not talking to InfraHub, of course. It just adds what they call the tool, and it's basically a function that the LLM will be able to call and do any form of operation. So here the one they use, for example, is just add the two numbers together. So just to show how to install the MCP and all that, I'll say let's use that. So pretty much with that, I have my base MCP server. So if I want to run it, I can actually run it with FastMCP, and then I need to provide source, DevNet MCP InfraHub, server.py, MCP. So if I start this command, it would actually, I should start the...
should be run, FastMCP run.
Yes, exactly. Thank you. Looks like you already built your own. That's good. At least if I make mistakes, you can help me. So here I have the MCP server. So in this specific case, it doesn't make much sense because the way it works, MCP, is there's two ways. Either you could have a server that exposes an HTTP endpoint and you will connect through the network. But for the sake of the demonstration, and also because the client that I have doesn't support that, what we're going to use is more what they call the STDIO. It's actually just using a standard pipe through the CLI. So the way it works here is I need now to declare my MCP server. So I just need to create a new one. So I'll call it InfraHub. And then I need to provide the instructions to install that. So I have a little cheat sheet here, but pretty much what I need to do is to provide. So for UV to work, we need to define, or at least there's probably multiple ways to do it, but the way I like to do it is I define the directory. So here, I say when you run UV, you're going to run it from this directory, and then that will be pretty much the same command that we had previously. So that will be run FastMCP, run again, the one that I forgot earlier, and then I will be able to pass the argument that I had here, which is I need to pass that. And so with that, I'm telling my LLM clients how to start my MCP server, And because it's using the STDIO, you will know how to communicate through that. So if I enable that, so now I see it tells me that the server is running. And if I go to the chat, here I can see that I have all the tools that I have. Like if I had multiple servers, that I could have many tools. But here I see that I have the tools that was defined. And see if I say, okay, add 2 + 5, then automatically the LLM understood that it needs to use that specific function. And that's actually what he called to that functions. And that's the response that he got from the MCP servers. So here pretty much like we did the, MCP 101, creating an MCP server, having it connected to my LLM, and then just calling it from a specific endpoint. So, not super useful so far, but that's the starting point.
Is that easy, basically?
Yeah, is that easy? Actually, I don't even need that. I think I can remove that because technically I'm not even using. So technically, like to create an MCP server, that's kind of that easy. So now, if I wanted to, let's try to see if I can get something more from InfraHub. So in this case, what we need to do is we need a few more things. So first, we need to install the InfraHub client. So that will be UV add InfraHub SDK. And then I install the package. So now that I have InfraHub installed, I will be able to create a new tool. And so in this case, my tool, for example, would be, let's say I want to get the site. I want to see, like, if we go to my instance of InfraHub, I have a lot of sites. So here, if I go to location sites, so I have 5 sites here. So if I wanted, for example, to retrieve the sites, and then so the description in this function in this case is actually very important because that's what the tool is going to use to be able to. That's what the LLM is going to use to understand what is this tool and what it can get from it, and that's what it's going to use as part of the reasoning to understand like what it can do. So, definitely super important. So here I'm just gonna create a client. So from SDK and import the client. In this pretty specific case, I'll just do it a bit dirty. I'm gonna hard code the address
sandbox.
of the sandbox. I could pass it through environment variable, but again, just for this exercise, and here because I don't even need to make a change. I'm just gonna use the default. There's not even need to authenticate. So here, if I do that, then I will be, so here.
Can you zoom in a couple of times in, please, Damien? There you go.
Better?
Yeah, that's much better. Yes. Thank you.
Okay, cool. So here, it's just a simple command. I load the client for InfraHub. I just make a query that actually query all the sites. So I just need to pass the specific information, and then I'm just going to return like the list of the sites, sites.display label, and so that will just return the list of all the sites specifically for this system. So that's the part that gets a little, and here, because I don't need anything, I can just remove that. And here, I'm just going to return a list of string. So that the LLM, like that's actually what's nice with Fast MCP is that it reuse a lot of the code from Fast API and Pydantic, and it's trying to be very Pythonic approach where the the signature of the functions, the argument that we have in the function, so that gets automatically translated into the right argument for the LLM to use. So it's pretty cool. And so here, again, very simple functions. Now, what I need to do here is, that's the part personally I don't like, and I couldn't find a good way, is like, because I made a change to my MCP servers, I need to restart it. And the way I've been doing that is just like disabling and re-enabling it. And that's how I've been doing it. I'm sure there's a better way, but honestly, I couldn't find easily. So that's my my cheat code. Now, so we see here, I actually have this new, get sites. And now I can get those information. If I say, hey, what are the sites present in InfraHub, then you will automatically understand what I want to do, and then he knows that he needs to call these specific tools. And we see that, that's what he got back from the system. And so I got, because I said that I wanted to provide just the display label, it pretty much only returned that. But I could also like make the return functions a little bit more, for example, like I could, I don't know if you know, but I could return a structure that is a little bit more complex, for example, where I return just the sites, but also say I want to have the contacts. So actually, I need to check the schema. So it's just contacts, and the contact is a text. So that would be contact.value. Here we go. And so in this case, now I'm returning a dictionary that return a string. So here now it's a slightly different format. So I'm going to go here again, restart the server, and
so there's a couple of questions, Damien. So Themistocles, the framework is not React, it's FastMCP. That's what we're using for this. And Mike, what's the name of the GUI you're using to interact with the LLM? That's Jan bit as Jan, basically.
Jan LLM.
It's the first time I see that tool too. It looks pretty cool.
I think it's, it's just the basic one. It's just that you can, like here I'm using ChatGPT, but I can connect Claude, I can connect any of them, and it's just like it's not tied to a specific LLM. And you could also run like on your own if you were running like your own local LLM with Olama or something like that. You could also connect to that. So I think it's pretty nice. And so here we see that now it just return a slightly different format. So actually, I was thinking I was preparing a little bit for that, and I was very quickly annoyed by I have to restart everything every time, and I felt like the testing was actually and since we've been talking a lot about unit testing and making things production ready, I was like, okay, I got to find how we actually write unit tests for these MCP servers, because it's gonna be super annoying otherwise. And so actually, I realized that it's another cool things with using FastMCP is that it's actually very easy to write tests. So I think that's what I'm going to do next, so that the next tools that I need to write, I don't need to do all this manual testing. So here, what I'm going to do is just do, hey, test tools.py, for example. And actually, the function is very, very simple. Like if I want to write a test that's as simple as that, actually. It's just, I just need to load the MCP server into a specific client that is provided by MCP. They will load that in memory during my testing. And then I just call the specific tools that I have, and I pass it specific arguments, and that's a way to actually, validate everything. So I think it's just, so important to, and it will save us a lot of time. So here, there's just, before we can do that, I need to, I believe, installed one module that is PyTest async.io, and then now I can run the test. So uv run PyTest test. Yes, I need to enable PyTest async.io. So that's a good reminder. So here what I have is so pretty much, because I'm using async.io, I need either to put a decorator that say, hey, this is an async function, or I can just add in this config file and say, hey, automatically use async.io for my tests. And so now that should actually work better. And so I have my test passing.
Mm-hmm.
And so why I did that, I think, is because I think if we want to make it more interesting, now we need to start looking at, okay, how are we actually going to make something useful of this system? And I think what I mentioned earlier is the temptations will be to say, okay, if I look into my InfraHub, I have organizations, I have device, I have circuits, and I could just build a list of like get circuits, get device, get organizations, get all of that. But then we get into this system that I mentioned earlier. It's like I'm just going to overwhelm the LLM. And the bigger my schema is going to be in InfraHub, the more tools I have, and then it's just going to work. And personally, for a long time, I was really struggling. I was like, okay, how are we going to make it work? And I think the way it works is we actually need to create like more smaller functions. That will be, for example, like, hey, get me the list of all the schema that I have, like list schema nodes, for example, like give me a list of all the member of the schema that I have in InfraHub. And then I will be able to list all the schema node in InfraHub. Perfect. And so here, in this case, there will be, I want the schema and I want all of the schema. And then I will end up with the schema. And then the way I will return that is for node in schema. So I know the formats here, so that's why I'm going a little bit maybe ahead of it. But so what this function is going to return, maybe let's look at it, is this function is going to return me a dictionary that has the name of the object, like the kind internally, and then we have a bigger object for it. And so here what I'm going to do is I'm just going to flatten that into a dictionary. And then I will be able to, for example, say, I just want to return the kind, and I want to return the label, for example. So that's where the test becomes very, very handy, is that, it's not so much complicated in terms of code, but we can see that if I have to go back to my clients and enable that and go back, it's a lot of painful process, where here I can put a breakpoint, for example. If I want to do that, I'm going to cheat a little bit and actually import a small tool that I use all the time that I think is very handy. And then I'm just going to create a test for it so that now I will be able to test my code locally without having to do reload my servers, do all of that. And I will be able to inspect everything, like what am I getting actually back from InfraHub? Is everything exactly the way I want it to be? And so on. So I'm just gonna get there. And so here, because I put a breakpoint, I can actually inspect the status of schema. And for example, if I go for schema.keys, we see that we have all the different elements of the schema. And if I go to a specific one, so actually I forgot. If I pick any of them, let's say I want the core webbook, for example, then you'll show me like exactly that's the entire object that describe like how this object looks like inside the database.
Right.
And all that. So it's a lot of information here. The issue is, I mentioned earlier, is like we cannot return everything because that will just overwhelm the LLM. So what I'm looking at here is just to return a table that has the kind, and the description or the label, so that the LLM knows that if he needs an IP address, then he needs to use the built-in IP address, for example. Or if he needs, a manufacturer or site, he will be able to go to location sites. Like that's how the systems will be able to determine that. So that's just what I want to return. And now I'll be able to, if I do my test here, I will just be able to validate, for example, that, I don't know, location site is part of the information that was returned. So it's a simple test, but at least it validates that, this is a dictionary.
At least you're getting data back. It's a dictionary and it has location site in the output.
Yeah, so it's a way to at least do a sanity check and making sure that things are working and there's not a typo in there. So if I run my test again, now I see that it passes, and so now it's actually able to work. So that's the first functions we can explore. Now the second one is, now I need to create a generic function that will actually get all the object of a specific kind. So it's interesting. So get all object of a specific kind from InfraHub. So it's a new tool that I'm adding, and here I'm creating the client, and I'm creating all of them of the kind, and then objects. It's actually amazing. You got it right. Pretty cool. So here it's, again, then I guess we need to unpack this. Like I'm creating another tool that is more generic. Instead of having my function that say get site, now I have a generic function that say get me any object in InfraHub. And I have another one that say I need to list the schema node. And I think the important part here is that I say to retrieve the list of available kind, use this tool. And because I'm giving it part of the instruction, then the LLM is actually going to be able to make the connection. And when I'm going to say, hey, show me the sites, he was like, okay, what is a site? And he's going to ask this one, and he's going to say, okay, a site is location site, and then he's going to query all the location sites. And that's where you start to see the importance of giving it the right information. So let me quickly write a test for this one, so that we just quickly validate that it's a working code, and that it's not going to blow up on me when I do something. So here, I do need this time to actually provide a specific site. So just a kind local site. By the way, for this test, in a real environments, I would probably try to mock the connections that goes to the server, so that those tests would run, even if I don't have a live server. Here, just because of the exercise, I'm doing it a little bit simpler, and I'm actually using the live instance even during the test, which is probably a bad behavior. But I hope people will forgive me.
You're forgiven. Yes, it's demo purposes, right? So it makes sense, Damien. There's a couple of questions here. So Themistocles, can you deploy the MCP server with Terraform? Not really. This is just a Python application, right, Themistocles?
So this instance, it needs to run, because here I'm running with the std.io mode, it needs to run locally. So usually people actually either they run it within Docker, or you can run it natively, like here with using UV, for example. Or I think the two most popular languages to write MCP servers are TypeScript and Python that I've seen. But they have library for all sorts of things. Now there are some more and more MCP servers that also can be reachable through HTTP. And those you could deploy them as containers, and I guess you could also deploy them with
Terraform.
With Terraform. Yeah. The one thing actually I'm very excited is I was talking to someone at Opsmill earlier. Is at some point I think we're going to have the MCP servers embedded into the tools. Like for example, I could totally see InfraHub in a few months having the MCP servers completely embedded, because we already have an HTTP endpoint. So it would be really easy to actually have dedicated endpoints just for the MCP server, so that if you install InfraHub, it automatically has the MCP built in, and you just have to use your tools and point them at your instance of InfraHub, and you don't have to run anything. So we're not there yet, but I think it's not too far away. To be honest, the reasons why we're not doing it today is like we need to iterate very, very fast, I think, on MCP today. Still so much to learn that, you know, it would just slow us down if we want to embed that right away in InfraHub. So probably best to have it on the side, but yeah, well, we're gonna integrate that pretty soon. So here my tests are passing. So I'm just gonna go back to my LLM clients now, do my little tricks, disable, re-enable. I'm so surprised they haven't thought up more about this specific use case, but anyway.
It's a beta version for Giant, so maybe they'll figure out when they go GA.
Yeah, and so here you see that I have my tools, but I don't have the Git sites anymore. And if I do the same question that I had earlier, what are the sites present in InfraHub? It should now understand that it needs to query for the schema, understand what's the list of sites, and then you have to return that. So yeah, I think that's pretty cool. And so now it actually should work with, you know, if I say, hey, what are the devices in InfraHub? It will, you know, do something similar,
nice.
and then you get the information, and you will be able to,
this
you know,
is
get
so
me
cool.
all the. So I think we start to see like how it's built up. Maybe just before we get too far, because there was something that's also annoying me pretty a lot, is it's more of a code thing. It's like this, I keep duplicating the clients here. So there's actually a cool thing in fast MCP is that we can, same as what we're doing with fast API, we have the ability to create what we call a lifespan function. So I'm going to just do it here, and hopefully will save us some time and make the code a little cleaner. So here what I'm doing is I'm declaring this lifespan function. And what that means is I'm saying, hey, when you start the server, the MCP server, I want you to I think he had it. I'm telling it, hey, start this specific lifespan, and then automatically initialize the client and store that, so that every time I make a request, it's not gonna, because what was happening here is that when you actually call those two tools, he would pretty much initialize the client twice, and it would probably load the schema twice. So there was a lot of inefficiency in that. So using this lifespan, if you're familiar with fast API, you probably know how it works, but it's an easy way that we have, for example, where now we'll be able to actually insert this object into every tool that anywhere that we need. We'll be able to just call context, and we have this little, we have a way basically, so inside this context, there's a lot of information. But the one that we care about is, you know, we can actually access the request context, and then lifespan context, and then we get the client. So now actually we can just get rid of that. And every time we need to have the client, we'll just be able to call that. And every functions we need the clients, we just need to call the context. So I think it's a much cleaner way to do that.
Yeah.
And what's cool is now I can just run my unit tests and validate that everything is passing. So I know that this big change that I just made still works. So I think where it gets more interesting now is, how do I filter on, and you know, how do I know, for example, that I can filter devices on role or on sites? Like if I go to InfraHub, you know, if I go, for example, to the device, I can filter on a lot of different things. Like I can filter by sites, I can filter by type, by status, by role. So how do I tell the LLM how that works? And so the way we're going to make it work is we're going to add a new functions now that say, I want to get node filters. So let me check if everything that has been generated here makes sense or not. So not so much. So what I hear is like it's to retrieve all the available filter for a specific node kind in the schema. And so in this case, just to make it simple, what I'm going to do is, so first I need to retrieve this specific object. So I just use the client schema get. And if I, just wanted to see, I guess it's kind, equal kind. So here I'm gonna, if I pass it a kind, I will automatically be able to retrieve this schema. And here what I will do is I will just return a dictionary that tells me like what is the type of filters that I can pass and what are the type of value that I expect. So here I will just for so this schema node is the same that I was showing earlier. So it's the, if we go back to maybe this, it is actually the same schema node here that has a list of attributes and a list of relationships. So here what I'm going to do is, okay, go over all my attributes. And then for each of my attributes, I want you to return the name. So attributes.name. And I know that for the filter to work, usually we need to provide __ value. Like that's what we need to provide at, for example, if I go to GraphQL, maybe, sorry if I'm switching fast here. If I wanted, for example, a location site here, I could provide name __ value. And then I would be able to say ATL1, for example. So that's the query, like that's the filter that I need. And technically, so you see here that works like that's usually there's auto completion working, but there's a small bug. I think it was fixed this afternoon. So here we see that that's my filter. That's what I meant here. That's the filters that I want to auto generate. So that's why here in my code, I'm pretty much going over all the attributes, and I say, okay, if the attribute is the name, I want the value. And here, just for the sake of here, I'll say, hey, this kind of attributes, I need that to be a string, for example. Ideally, I should actually have a function that check the kind of my attributes, and if it's a number, I would put integer, something that will tell the LLM like what kind of object needs to pass. But here, let's just assume for the sake of the demo that all my attributes are actually strings. So we're gonna go one more time very quickly. It takes, it's just a minute, but I think it's gonna save us a lot of time, because if I actually made any typo or anything, that will be very annoying and frustrating to troubleshoot that. So here, location site, for example. So then I expect a directory, and then I guess we'll just see what gets returned. Does that make sense so far? I hope I'm not going too fast, or.
No, this is fascinating. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. A couple of questions here though came through. Themistocles LLM running on another server. Well, the LLM is OpenAI, right? So ChatGPT, like Damien was showing, he put in the key in Gen, right? That's the client. His OpenAI key, so you can connect to the OpenAI LLM. GPT 4.1 it was, right? So that's the generic one, but you build these tools with MCP, right? That gives you access to like local data or data outside of what OpenAI has. So you basically kind of like do a augmentation of that model, right, Damien?
Yeah, that's exactly what MCP is for, is to give new
Augment it, yeah.
capabilities, new tools to any LLM, like, because all of them support that now, like whether it's here I'm using ChatGPT, but could be Claude, it could be any of the model. They usually all support the function, the tool calling now.
And then there was one quick question you mentioned about MCP and InfraHub, but then Audric is asking, could you briefly tell us about the implementation of the MCP support in InfraHub? So that's not there yet, right? And what difficulties did you encounter when you started looking at that, Damien?
Yeah, so we haven't released our MCP server yet. We're actually in the process of building it, so hopefully very soon. And I think the challenge that we encounter is what I said earlier, is like, we need, initially our first attempt was like, hey, we have this great graphical schema. We're just gonna, like, if you look at our graphical schema that we have here, like, I think it's graphical.schema. So we have, I think it's that. No, I'll find it. But pretty much the graphical schema, the issue is it was too big. Like, if we passed our entire schema, which was probably thousands of lines, we would just run out of tokens on the LLM, and you would not be able to do anything, or at least, very limited. So really the challenge for us is, how do we give it just the right information? How do we make it so that it knows what is the next, how can he itself understand what it needs to ask to be able to retrieve information? And so it's exactly what we're doing here, is like, we need to be build a completely different mindset on how we expose InfraHub and all the data that we have to the LLM. It's very different than just like building a traditional automations where we would just have the most descriptive API documentation possible and then let the tool figure it out. So I think that was really the main challenge here. So while we were talking here, so now I have a functions that return the filters, and now I need to just modify my my function to say, okay, now I do accept as an option to have filters, for example. And what I'm going to do here is that if the filters are provided, then my objects are going to be, so we have a dedicated function that's called filter. And then here, I'm just going to flatten everything and pass it directly down, because this function, I know it accepts the things directly. And then if there's no filter, I'll keep doing it this way and just return all of them. So now I have these functions, and I'm just going to tell it like to retrieve the list of available filter for a specific kind, use the get not filter. So it's super important to provide that, because that's actually what we tell the tool, and that's how it's going to, like, those instructions are actually part of the prompt when we do that. So the tool really need to understand what's going to be used. And so with that, I think we should be able now to give it a try. So I'm gonna one more time reboot that. And then I see then have my tools now. And if I say,
so it should be filters now too, like filter capability,
what are the
right?
devices of role edge present in InfraHub? So here my expectation is that it should understand that it needs to filter based on the role. And so here we go. So if you look at what happened, I think that's where it gets super interesting, is that initially it started with just throwing stupid stuff at it in the get function, like the kind is wrong and the filter was not there. And so it's like, okay, there's nothing here. And so it then realized, okay, maybe I need to query the list of the schema And so he actually got the infra device, and he understood that he needed the filter, and then he was actually able to call the functions with the right filters. So when you look at it this way, it's actually, honestly, the first time I saw that, I was pretty amazed. I was like, fuck, it's
fascinating.
actually amazing.
It's incredible, yeah.
And to be honest, but at the same time, it feels like you're just, I think there was Jason that presented that at AutoCon. That was really cool. He had this picture of a monkey with a gun. And it was like, sometimes he felt like automation in the early days, I think he was talking like 10 years ago, it felt like people were afraid of automation because they felt like we were just giving a gun to a monkey. And to be honest, when you see that, it feels a little bit this way as well. It's like, you just try shits and see what sticks, and try things again. And I actually, to me, like the haha moment was actually when I realized that there's actually a way to make it work better, is to use assistant. So I don't know if you're familiar with assistant, Adrian.
No.
For me, like, that was a game changer when I started thinking about it. So I'm actually gonna reuse this one because I created that earlier. But the concept of the assistant is that pretty much you predefine a prompt, and you create it's like the same chat interface, except that you have a way to give a lot more context to your system. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm actually creating pretty much a special chat GPT, and I give it instruction. I say, okay, you are an infrastructure specialist, you want to answer questions, and I'm very explicit, like all the information you need are in InfraHub, and you can access it via an MCP servers that has a number of tools. If someone asks you about a specific data, you first need to identify what is the associate kind, and you are able to retrieve this information with a specific model, including the filter available. So I'm pretty much, so actually I need to make sure that I name the tool the same way. Did I name the tool the same way? Get node filters. So here I'm saying, okay, instead of trying stupid stuff, you need to do it in this order. You need to first understand what's there. You need to get the filters. You need to use the tools to get the objects to be able to retrieve that. And then that's how you're going to be able to work. So I did this one in 5 minutes, before the call. So it's actually a very simple one. But you could imagine a very structured prompt that provide a lot more information about what's in InfraHub and how it's structured and the kind of information that you need. And now if I save that, and so I'm going to do a new chat, but instead of using the vanilla or chat GPT, I'm going to use this one now. And if I actually ask exactly the same question on this one, we should actually get a very different behaviors, because this time what it's saying is, first, I don't even need to say that I want it present in InfraHub, because I already tell it like everything you do is bringing back information from InfraHub, for example. And if I just say, what are the device overall age, then we see here it's immediately understood that it needs to understand the schema
first, yeah.
Then the filter, then the objects, and boom, I actually got my response. And I like, because the prompt of the assistant actually kind of is the glue that brings all of that together. And I think that's, I think when that gets really cool. So for example, the part of the work we're working on is when we're going to release the MCP servers, like we need to release the MCP, but we also need to release those master prompts that you can build and put into your assistant. And the thing is, like, people, I think, will need to also learn that, because let's say tomorrow you have your own monitoring tool and it also has an MCP servers. Then you want to have your prompts that tells it like, hey, you have access to InfraHub, that's the internet state. You have access to LibreMS, and that's the observability, or your access to Selector. And I know Selector, for example, they've been very vocal. They have an MCP as well. And so you're going to have to define in those prompts like a big part of your infrastructure and how things connect together. And then that's how you will be able to have your LLM actually understand your own topology and leverage the different tools that are available to you. But like this bringing together all the LLM, all the MCP servers, and all the tools, that's kind of, everyone will have to do its own, build that on its own. Like, even if everyone should provide a lot of guidance and example. There's definitely a last mile kind of things that remain the responsibility of the end users, and then you will be able to say, hey, tell me which devices are not present in the monitoring, and you'll be able to say, okay, I go to an InfraHub, get the device, and I go to
Monitoring
selector, and then you will be able to do like more advanced tests because you understand that it has two sources of data. He needs to compare them, and he understand like the goal of each of them. Like that's the context stuff. So
fantastic. And the agent is a feature of Gen AI, or is that?
No, actually, every single LLM client has one. Like
okay.
So if you look at the tools like Claude and ChatGPT, they have their own. They have different names, but they have something similar. Gemini, every single one has a similar feature. So it's just like we need to build this context and give it more instructions on how to use those tools, and then you can really achieve I think the superpowers.
Fantastic. Wow, thank you so much, Damien. This is fantastic. So then MCP coming into InfraHub soon. Can InfraHub connect to any MCP service like F5 or Cisco based on device type? That was a question just came through.
Yeah, I just see this one. I think the goal is not necessarily for InfraHub to connect. That will be more like if we go back to the topology we had earlier. I think the goal is that you want your LLM, your clients to have an MCP to InfraHub, an MCP to F5, an MCP to all of that, and the orchestrations will happen on your LLM. But the goal for us is to make our MCP server great and easy to use so that your LLM knows exactly how it can make like very complex requests and how it can, for example, get the IP address, and then it will be able to use the information that he extracted from InfraHub to connect to the other MCP servers, for example. But the goal is not necessarily for us to talk to everyone.
Yes, I mean, think of it, Anis, right? Like MCP server is kind of like a REST API interface. It's just for LLMs, right? That's how you can kind of think of it.
Yeah, 100%.
It's an interface specifically developed for LLMs to interact with your solution. If it's InfraHub or if it's Cisco or if it's F5 or Juniper, whatever it is, as long as they provide an MCP server interface, right, then you can hook in your LLM into that specific product.
Yeah, Alex actually has a really good question, and you're right. Like here, we've only been talking about pulling data through the MCP, but you can also make actions. Like you could create branches, start the CI. You could open a propose change. You could merge a branch. Like you could actually do also all those tasks. Those probably would be more like individual tools that we need to expose, but it's definitely possible.
Fantastic. All right. This was really cool. I learned a lot in this one. This is brand new stuff for me. So, I mean, it's like you said, is pretty much brand new for everyone. They came up in November, Anthropic, with this, and then it just exploded. Yeah, April, May, when everybody was looking into this. All these frameworks came out, right? Agent to agent from Google, A to A, and then agency from Cisco and Microsoft came up. So the agents, Internet of Agents, and all of this, it's really taking off. Okay, so Audric, one last comment. My team, thin line between agent and MCP. My team will surely be very interested in everything we've just discovered. When do you think you'll upload the recording to YouTube? Audric is probably going to be there. It's already there. So it's there.
I think it's live. I think it should be immediately.
Yeah, it's immediately available after we wrap up this. All right. Any final words, Damien? This is fantastic. Thank you so much.
Yeah, actually, I think there's an emerging topic that I found super interesting is, now that we think of like we have this super database, we call that source of truth, that have all of this information about the infrastructure and how everything is connected. And when you think about it, whether it's InfraHub, Netbox, or there's so much information. And actually, it's someone from Cisco that's reached out and say, hey, we're starting to call that a knowledge graph. It's like the knowledge graph of the infrastructure that has all of this information. And now really the challenge is making all this information available for the LLMs to use and supercharge the other tools. And so, yeah, I'll say knowledge graph. I think it's a very, very cool topic. And I'm sure we'll keep hearing more about it in the near future.
All right, folks, you heard it here first. Knowledge graph from Damien. Thank you all so much. Thank you all for joining us, for watching this. Next week, since we mentioned Selector, I'll have John Capobianco coming on. We'll see what Selector is doing. Yeah, so it's a very nice follow through.
John has been definitely one of the pioneers, I'll say, of talking about MCP and LLM. Is doing a lot of really cool stuff. So yeah, very cool.
Yeah. So looking forward also to what he's done at Selector. We've had him on the stream here a couple of times before, also back in the day when he was trying to get LLMs on Cisco gear for whatever reason. But I'm curious to see what he's doing at Selector now. So join us also then next week, same time, same day. In the meantime, Damien, thank you so much. We'll see if you want to come back, right? We'll see what else.
I never say no. If you invite me, I'll come back.
I learned so much because it's always to me fascinating, and you're at the top of technology, right? Like MCP, we were talking about it, right? So you're always on the ball. I always learn a lot from these sessions myself. Thank you. I always love to have you here because I learned a lot. All right, folks.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
See you on the next one. Take care, everyone. And thank you so much, Damien.